Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Josh Hennick filling for Mike Hill here on a Friday edition of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Football at 4 with Adam Caplan. Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, at Caplan NFL over on the Twitter X platform. And of course, today's Football 4 being brought to you by the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Go to the Gallery, go to Ocean, go for the win. For more info, visit oceanac.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Adam Caplan is back as we're finally past the beta version of the roster, Adam, and things are really starting to take shape for the 2023 season. How you doing on this Friday?
I'm glad to be with you, Josh. Yeah, and look, they did some interesting things. I mean, it's kind of funny. Moshe and I have talked to some people we know from around the league, and they kind of laugh. Like, and one guy said to us this week, "Why in the world would they keep 7 corners?" Well, the Eagles like to keep their own players, and that's just look. It's unorthodox. It's not the way it's done, and they don't like to cut their draft picks. They like to at least let them get through a season or two and then make a decision on them. Why are they keeping 70 tackles? They have a good rotation going, but they're probably going to be 2 guys who sit every week. But that's just what they're going to do, for at least for now. Now, it doesn't mean they won't cut anyone from their defense at some point this season. But as you said, beta version, now we have the initial, and I call it the initial 53-man roster. And now we can kind of compare and contrast, because I know a lot of people are looking at that. That's the big thing with this football team, Josh. Is it better than last year's team? We certainly can go through that.
So one of the questions people have is, like you just said, can the roster be better? Because they do have, Adam, 7 new starters. Yeah. That in and of itself is definitely something I think people have been focused on this offseason.
From a macro standpoint, it would be hard to. They've lost so many starters. Now, they would tell you, in most cases, they made the choice to walk away from these players and not offer them a deal, or they didn't like what the agent wanted and the player wanted, and so they decided not to go there. So some of it's a decision by the club. But overall, look, this is a Super Bowl team, and they lost 7 starters. But there are some situations, Josh, and we'll go through this, where they're probably going to be better or have the potential to be better, which is maybe not what we thought going into training camp. The reason why I want to talk about this today is because there's certain things that we ran this by some people around the league of look at the Eagles roster. And I know I talked to some people with the Browns when they were in, and I remember I noted on our show last year after the Eagles practiced the Browns, and I was there in Bree, Ohio. So when the Browns told me, he goes, "This looks like a Super Bowl team," and I kind of laughed. I'm like, "Are you sure about that? Where are you getting this?" He goes, "It's obvious. Do you see?" He goes, "We just worked against them. They kicked our butt, and they just thought that the Eagles had a great roster." Now we fast forward, Josh, to now, and this is a really good roster, but there are some differences.
Well, one of the differences that you mentioned, some of the changes might be for the better. You go from Miles Sanders being the quote-unquote primary back to now a legitimate running back by committee. So could the combination of Gainwell, Swift, and Penny potentially be better than just one guy in Miles Sanders?
I was skeptical when this was brought up to me back in May, but you know what? Watching it in training camp and seeing how incredibly dynamic DeAndre Swift was with the limited touches he got in camp, because they sort of put him in bubble wrap and just wanted to get him to the regular season. We have not seen a back like this, and I don't know how long. I mean, maybe Brian Westbrook. Obviously, they're 2 completely different players. But in terms of the passing game and what he can do and how he can line up outside and beat a linebacker easily in coverage, he's so smooth. Like, that's one way. And, they stopped throwing to Sanders. Sanders had 50 receptions, I believe, it is rookie season. It just went down every year, and they just didn't really throw to him anymore last year. Very, very, very little. Gainwell with his short yardage role, which nobody knew about when they drafted him out of Memphis, but he's become more of a grinding back, and Penny, the home run hitter, and Boston Scott, the jack of all trades, highest paid back on the roster. So Josh, yes, it does have the potential based on what you were alluding to, because what we call this a specialty backfield, that holds true. That has not changed since training camp started. We just didn't know exactly how it would break down, but now we have a good idea. And, yeah, I would say it has a chance to be better. I know that some people say, wait a minute, Sanders had 11 touchdowns where he didn't have any the year before. He had a very good, he had a career year. There's no question. But it's the sum of the parts. I'm going to say that it's going to be better somehow.
The other position on offense are replacing no more Isaac Seumalo, who Isaac Seumalo was here for years. He He played multiple positions on the line, and now he's no longer here, and now it's Cam Jurgens. So what do you think, Adam, that transition is going to be like when we actually see it play out in real games?
Yeah, this is one where you just talked about in passing here, how it's got to play in real games here. That's a big deal because the starters didn't play in the preseason. This would worry me a little bit. He's not a natural guard. He's a natural center. You're going to have to see how he handles the power game. I know the Browns, they did very well on the first day of the joint practice. They handled Jurgens. Jurgens did not. He just didn't handle the power of the Browns D-line, and they was much better the second day. This is one, Josh, that I'm a little bit, I don't want to say skeptical, but it's kind of a wait and see. And it's kind of, we have to see how he does, and and if he has a game where he doesn't play well, how he rebounds. But remember, Josh, he only played center 2 years at Nebraska. It was tight end before that. So let's not forget, this is only his fourth season as an offensive lineman, and now he's at a position where he's had limited experience. So there are going to be some tough sledding here, but he's their guy, and they're not going to walk away from this. He's going to be Kelsey's replacement long term, but for right now, he's the right guard.
Talk with Adam Caplan, NFL Insider, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds podcast, at Caplan NFL on the Twitter X platform, joining us on the Elite Acura hotline. The other starters are replacing Adam. The rest of them are on defense. Let's start with inside linebacker. Now, TJ Edwards, Kazir White, that was the linebacker tandem net last year. Totally different this year. Now you got Nakobe Dean and Zach Cunningham.
This might be a little bit profound, but I've thought about it this week, and we know Zach Cunningham did really well. On the surface, people will think this is preposterous. How could they possibly be better than T.J. Edwards, who really came on after a slow start to his career as an undrafted free agent? Great story of development. He's getting over $6 million a year with the Bears. And Kaiser White was a great find for them, particularly in coverage. In the second half of the season, late last season, he dropped off. But I'd say this, Nakobe Dean is a supremely talented linebacker. We know you wonder about the physicality with him, and he had some injuries. He was able to play through it at Georgia, but there's some worry about his size, and Zach Cunningham with the injuries. I'm not giving up the fact that this could be actually better over time, not initially, but as the season progresses, because Zach Cunningham gives them size that they have not had at linebacker. Now, here's the one area where you worry about it. Teams will target him. He's playing a position. He's really not. He doesn't have much experience as a weak side linebacker in a 34 front, which they play. This is where I think on early downs with tight ends, they'll probably go after him. But if he could hold up against the pass, Josh, this might surprise people. It actually could be better. I know some people say there's no way, but let's just see what happens, because Zach Cunningham is all the way back physically. Nakobe Dean is super gifted. Let's just see how this works out.
Really quick, Adam, when you say it could be better, is it one of those deals where it might be like, hey, it might not be all it could be week 1 and 2, but by the time you get to like 11 and 12, they're really hitting their stride?
Yeah, I mean, Zach Cunningham for a while was one of the best inside linebackers in football. Was a 43 or 34. He's a tremendous tackler. He's physical. He's a leader. Good football player. He's just been hurt the last couple of years. And he didn't – look, it's one of these situations where he didn't get a real good deal because he signed late. He was cut by the Titans, and he clearly won that weak side job over Christian Ellis and Miles Jack, who wound up retiring. So you're right, Josh. Let's just see how this plays out. I'm not willing to give up that, because I know some teams were skeptical about Zach Cunningham, what he had left, but he moves so well. I was at all 3 joint practices. It just turned out to be, I happened to be home off my training camp tour for a bunch of his practices. I was pleasantly surprised at how good he looks. And let's not forget, again, he's pretty long. He's one of the biggest linebackers they've had in years.
Let's go to safety now. This is a position that I've been asking a million questions about, Adam, because last year, Howie Roseman made that trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You had Marcus Epps, what it felt like for like 5-6 years on the roster. Both of them are gone now. Now it's Reed Blankenship and who? Exactly.
That right now, Terrell Edmonds has it. We've called it 1 and 1A between Edmonds and Evans, but we know C.D. Brown at some point is going to start this season. Yeah, on paper, obviously, what they had was better last season. Marcus Epps was a great story of development, being claimed off waivers. I think it was waivers I know it came from the Vikings, whether the practice squad or waivers, whatever the case may be. over time, he turned to be a great find for the Eagles, and he signed a nice free agent contract with the Raiders. And then, obviously, Gardner Johnson he probably was going to lead the NFL in interceptions. And, the way I understand it was, he's kind of a guy, Josh, that you really can't teach what he does. Like, his ability to track the football is kind of amazing. And I know that talking to the Lions, and I was with them 2 weeks ago when they hosted the Jaguars for 2 days, they're really happy with him. And he's loud, he's brash, but he backs it up. But look, it's interesting because Blankenship, Josh, really, not only did he have camp, he had a bunch of interceptions. He's not the athlete that Gardner Johnson is. Gardner Johnson's not a supreme athlete, but he's a better athlete. He moves better than Blankenship. Blankenship's bigger physically. So we'll see how that works out. But Blankenship's been another great find for the Eagles as an undrafted free agent. But he's going to play post safety now as a first and second level defender. They've got Edmonds, they've got Brown, and they've got Evans. They'll have to Jimmy rig this and see how it works out. But it's going to be a downgrade. There's no question. Now, over time, C.D. Brown he could change the game a little bit because it's a physicality. It's just how our team's going to target him when he gets on the field. That would be a challenge.
Now, the safety position, at least in my mind, Adam, is also connected to corner because they're both in the same part of the defense. The Eagles, what about the depth behind the big three of Slay, Bradbury, and Maddox? Because last year, you seemingly had more experience in that depth. Well,
here's the thing. McPherson being out for the season with his torn Achilles, Josh Jobe is clearly a three. He would have McPherson would have been the fourth outside corner. They cross-trained him to do that. That's no longer the case. Right now, they don't know who their fourth outside corner would be. Mario Goodrich would be the backup slot. We know Justin Evans could do it as well. Eli Ricks may or may not dress. Ringo may or may not dress. He had more of a down than up camp. They have players, Josh, but again, as I maintain, I continue to say this, depth is not how many guys you have. It's how confident are you to put these guys on the football field to do their job. We know Slay and Bradbury are terrific. Jobe is a great story of development. Give the Eagles more credit. Again, another undrafted free agent. It's pretty remarkable. But after that, Josh, you do worry now. That here's the thing, though. As someone from another team told me who knows Josh Jobe very well from scouting that area, you do worry about him because he was an undrafted free agent. If he had to start, let's say he had to start 3 or 4 games, how could he handle it? Because would be a big step up for him. But remember now, the guy that was supposed to win it, Greedy Williams, got cut, and by the way, he still is not signed with the football team.
Speaking of depth at corner, what about the depth on the defense as a whole? Because right now, you only have 3 linebackers, primary linebackers on the roster, and you got I know it's 7 D tackles, but it feels like a million, compared to the linebackers.
People, around the league have kind of laughed at this, but, as I explained to one personnel guy who knows the Eagles pretty well because he has his team as a pro advance, I said, you got to understand the way they think. They love having a rotational defensive line. They've always had one. They've got incredible depth. No one's worrying about losing Javon Hargrave. I've not heard, to be honest with you, Josh, I've not heard any complaints about Jalen Carter or just going with younger players next to Fletcher Cox. It's actually been a good thing. But as you said, Josh, to close this out, they only have 3 inside linebackers on the roster. And Vince Sumerman was terrific on special teams, but the reason I was told the teams didn't claim him, he had a guarantee in his contract. Teams they didn't want to pay him that guarantee because they didn't know how long he'd be on the roster. So he's back. Now, the question would be, because he's the only true inside linebacker, Josh, right now off on their practice squad, how will they handle game day? Because Moshe had a great point about he had heard Patrick Johnson play inside linebacker in the final preseason game, so maybe he's the 4th inside linebacker. But that certainly would be a concern because they have no experience in back of the 2 starters here with Cunningham and Dean. And obviously Dean's a first-time starter here, so it's going to look different, Josh. There's no question about it. And don't forget, Hassan Reddick just started to come back to practice. He'll play with something on that broken thumb that was repaired. So this is it's going to look a little different, and folks have to be patient, and we'll see what it looks like against the Patriots next Sunday.
He's Adam Caplan at Caplan NFL on the Twitter X platform. Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe, download it, give it the 5-star review, and he joined us today on the Elite Acura Hotline. Adam, great stuff. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Thank you.